Senate in the middle of the night. This is House Bill 299. The bill already passed the House. It's going to go to the governor's desk in Texas, and I'm reading here from the Texas Tribune. It says a woman is an individual whose biological reproductive system is developed to produce ova, while a man is someone whose reproductive system is developed to fertilize the ova. The bill would require that this definition be used across state statute, with potentially wide-ranging consequences for trans and intersex people who would see their gender identity reverted back to the sex they were assigned at birth in state records. The bill, called the Women's Bill of Rights, was authored by Representative Ellen Troxclair and carried by Senator Maines Middleton. Supporters of the bill say it's about preserving single-sex spaces like bathrooms, locker rooms, and prisons, and opportunities like athletic competitions, which, you know.
How controversial is that? We just don't want dudes in our women's spaces, and vice versa.
We know that there's just like a handful of trans athletes that they're targeting and using as a fig leaf for overall like religious orthodoxy and trying to place boundaries on gender and sex and things of that nature. There's something, just as an aside, estimates prior to any broad conversation about trans affirming care in this country that show that intersex people are around like 1% to 2% of the population, and they may contain both traits, just to show how impossible it is to make this determination. But they're choosing to enforce it because of religious fundamentalism, essentially. But this was a great speech clipped here by Human Rights Watch, I believe, showing this man named Nick Mulberg.
Human Rights Campaign.
Oh, sorry, Human Rights Campaign. Human Rights Campaign clip this. This guy's Nick Mulberg talking about this bill and what's so wrong with it.
I'll call you a coward because you're not actually interested in protecting women and sexes. That's the guise of the bill, right? It's the Trojan horse that you use for all this anti-trans nonsense. I remember for years as Republicans, gay marriage is going to end the world. And of course, then the public opinion shifted, the Overton window moved, and you had to pick a new scapegoat. That's what you always have to do. It's not that you can actually sit here and do the business of the people, make lives better for Texans like me. No. There's no time for that. We got to bully 1% of the population. We gotta harm them as badly as we possibly can. We gotta make them afraid. We gotta make them stay in their homes so that you're not forced to actually acknowledge that they exist. If we were sitting here like 50 years ago, maybe 60 years ago, instead of talking about trans women going into bathrooms, we'd be talking about black women going into white bathrooms. Do y'all ever get tired of being on the wrong side of history?
It's unbelievable how many people fall for that little Kafka trap. Mutilating children and tricking them and deceiving them that they're the opposite sex. That's the wrong side of history. This is in no way compassionate. 20 to 35% of the kids that have gender dysphoria, they also have autism and a lot of other mental health issues. So treating it with hormones, social interventions, and making them lifelong medical victims is not the right side of history. I'm sorry.
That's incredible. That's well said.
100% true. No, it's 100%.
And secondly, can we get this guy a haircut right here? Jesus Christ. He looks like a bum.
True. And I think I would only add or, maybe amend what he was saying with the fact that, not only do they do these bills instead of passing bills to, help average Texans and alleviate any of their many issues, right? I can only imagine. I've never been to Texas, but I hear bad things. They do this to distract from the fact that they're doing the exact opposite. These cultural war topics are purposely floated out by Republicans to distract from the fact that they are using all of their other time to serve the 1%, to actively make the lives of the working class, worse.
Right.
This is just a distraction.
It's a distraction, and I agree with you. Sometimes people say it's a distraction to tell Democrats to avoid talking about it, which is not what you're saying, obviously. But I just want to make that kind of clear, this delineation between people that say that culture issues, which is a really, I think, it's often a term that is meant to, I don't know, obscure marginalized people and minority rights by definition, right? Because if it's a cultural issue, if you're trying to protect minority rights, you're almost certainly not going to have the majority of the public on your side. If we just abandoned cultural issues during the civil rights movement, I got to tell you, poll numbers on integration and getting rid of Jim Crow, not necessarily exactly where you would want them to be. And that's why it's important to have standards and values and things that you fight for so you can have the minority groups in your coalition that you're advocating for.
When the culture issue is, should white supremacy be allowed to march? The answer is no.
Right.
Well,
right.
Also these cultural issues are being used as wedges to segregate the working class. They're being used as a tool by our capitalist overlords to put one group of workers against another group of workers who they have infinitely more in common with.
It's the rich people, man. Don't you get it? Jeff Bezos is the reason you're fucked up. It's not your fault, man. Just keep doing what you're doing. It's Bill Gates, man. That's why you're fucked up.
by nature of them sharing the same like socioeconomic strata, right, in our socioeconomic hierarchy, which is oftentimes like, and more often than not, a caste system. And this is just an active tool that they're using, and that's why we have to call it out. We don't have to sidestep it, because if we sidestep it, then it seems like there's some legitimacy there. But it's actively being used to make it seem as though like you have more to hate about your neighbor, undocumented or not, than you do to have about Elon Musk, who's like actively taking money out of your pocket and putting it into his pocket, which is just,
Yeah. If you believe, here's a simple litmus test for you. If you believe healthcare is a human right, then you believe trans care is a human right too, because trans care is healthcare. They need it. Trans people need gender affirming care. They need to be able to go to their doctor. They need to be able to get the medications that they need, because gender dysphoria is a thing that is diagnosable.
And they'll die if they don't get it otherwise. If that kid doesn't get his if that little girl doesn't get her testosterone, she's going to die. There's no way she can live in her own body the way that God made her. We have to intervene now. Drugs, hormone treatment, hormone therapies, surgeries, castration.
And has been, and there is a treatment plan for it. And all of these Republican legislatures and all of these conspiracy theorists that Trump has staffed Health and Human Services with are flying in the face of established medical procedures that have been borne out with decades of research and trial and error and all the stuff about protecting.
Decades of research. I don't know about that.
Kids, you need parental consent in all of this. You do. And then when people are adults, hey, what happened to liberty? Now they're going to be basically like policing people's genitalia as they come into bathrooms or locker rooms. What do trans women and men who have been living at that as that gender and for many years or whatever, even if you're newly transitioned, how do you go when you present as a woman or a man, if you're trans, into another person's bathroom and say?
Not our problem. That's your fucking problem if you want to look and deceive people into thinking you're the opposite sex. I mean, these people have lost their goddamn minds. How is that our problem, that you decided to destroy your life and destroy your body to deceive people into thinking you're the opposite sex?
Somebody is looking out for you. Like, just think about the anxiety and fear that this creates with trans people in Texas. You're going to see instances like we've already seen across the country where people aren't even trans, but they're being targeted violently when they go into bathrooms. It's going to be the same thing for trans.
Where has that happened? Where has that happened?
People too, and that's what they want.
Remember the Joe Rogan fake video that he fell for? That was clearly a skit, just demonstrating exactly that. They are so ready for it, and it's instructive that in 2017, America's like, North Carolina, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
Caring about this, and that, like, basically we've allowed them to change that's why the schools, the intramural sports or whatever, the high school athletics, that's why that became the issue, is because the bathroom one wasn't even salient enough for this hysterical, and it is just like, it's the type of hysteria that like led to lynchings. It's like the people that are go ahead, Brandon.
And I think it's really important that he draws the parallel between like the experience of Black people in America and the experience of trans people, not just trans women, because we do tend to, as a society, erase the existence of trans men, and I think that's, on purpose.
Slaves. 1800s. No air conditioner, no food, no freedom, no liberties. Can't read, can't write. Probably haven't seen your children or your parents or your family. Indentured servitude. Working in horrible conditions, low pay, oftentimes no pay. Transgender kids today. We have an abundance of liberties. It's not even close to being the same.
Or if not on purpose, strategic on the Republican side, because they're misogynists, and that's what they're really interested in policing, which is women's spaces and women's bodies as men. But I would even go further and say they would not necessarily, I mean, they would be the kind of people who are arguing against like Black inclusion into white spaces in the 60s, but even more poignantly, and I think this is important to highlight because gender is a social construct, race is a social construct. These are the kinds of people who in the 1800s would be, rally against the idea of including Black people into the definition of human, because people pretend like these are immutable, categories that have always existed in a state that they exist in now as part of nature. But we forget that 200 years ago, we didn't consider Black people to be human. There are probably Republicans who are watching this right now joking to themselves, ha, 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 I still don't. But that is just proving my point.
Yeah, a lot of doctors did too. A lot of doctors thought Jews weren't human. A lot of doctors thought smoking was good. A lot of doctors made a lot of stupid decisions along the way and got paid for it. He's just too stupid to realize that this could be possibly happening to transgender community.
that these are that these social constructs are culturally mediated, they're socially mediated, they are determined by individuals in the moment, and that's what they're so afraid of. That one day we will get to the point where gender is all inclusive of trans people in a way that it isn't right now, and it'll seem just as natural and normal as it doesn't seem now, like because that's what it is for like race. And they still have issues with that. Some of them have issues with that, but that's just the nature of changing definitions and changing social categories. And for some people, it already is that way. And we're in a constant battle to expand that acceptance, and I think that they're afraid of that.
Yeah, someone I know is like a gay man who just got married, like, eloped basically. And I was looking at his pictures and thinking about how I didn't even give it a second thought. I guess that is like I'm backtracking there. I was just thinking about like me growing up, and in 2008 or whatever, I remember being really inspired by the push to get like the Obama campaign, and eventually Biden had to be the one to do it, going on Ellen DeGeneres finally saying, okay, gay people can get married. But how this was a real fight. Like this was a very real fight for this kind of like stuff that's, at least in my, more normalized now. We're in a very reactionary backlash period.
Won by activists, interrupting things like Obama's coronation.
Exactly. Without these activists that these same people say are detracting, like the centrists from the Democratic Party.
You're actually hurting your cause.
Yeah.
Like me sitting on my ass.
I'm the only one who knows how to get us to win. And like my philosophy has not worked out, but just like keep hacking at it because the ruling elites are behind me. Like, activists win things. The activism is like a really important part and needs to be a part of our Democratic coalition, not jettisoned for, the Lexus driving Republican in the suburbs of Philadelphia. With that said, I'm going to close the phone lines and then read some answers.
Just to be clear, the UK Tavistock Clinic in 2020, 35% of referred youth showed autism spectrum disorder. 35% of the kids that were coming in for transgender therapy, gender dysphoria, 35% of them were autistic. Now we're tricking and deceiving autistic children to thinking they can be the opposite sex. Get the fuck out of here.